Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel, and today we're taking a look at an interesting new two-way radio from Baofeng in China called the UV-5RM Plus GPS. And whilst the overall style of this radio may look familiar because it's very similar to the classic UV-5R, which has been around for many years, it is a totally different radio. And you can see how people get confused because Baofeng make so many different models and they get repackaged and sold through different retailers that it's easy to be totally confused about the model numbers and everything. But bit of history on this. About 18 months ago, I believe it was, I was looking on Aliexpress and I came across a radio called the UV-5RH. And basically this model featured a larger casing, higher power, bigger battery pack with USB-C charging, a colour display and a larger screen size. So it was totally different from the original UV-5. And this is the result of it, really, I suppose. That model that came out 18 months ago was in the same casing as these radios that we've got in front of us here. But now this takes it a step further. So what we've actually got is an even more revised version with a more colourful screen, different software, so I assume it's a different system board inside the radio. As you can see there, the screen is quite nice actually on these new ones, and these radios are priced around $40 US, so they do offer quite a lot of value for money. But let's take a quick look at some of the features before we look in depth at this radio. So what we've got here is a tri-band radio that can transmit on 136 to 174 megahertz, 220 to 260 megahertz, which is the 1.25 meter band in the US and Canada, I think it is. It's not available in Europe, but a lot of people still use that band over there as well. It's a shame that we don't have access to it over here in Europe, but that's because of DAB, digital audio broadcasting for radio stations. So that's why we don't have access to the 1.25 meter band. But anyway, yeah, the radio also covers 400 to 480 megahertz, and it can also receive between 350 and 390 for the utility bands in some countries. I believe police services are used in some countries on that range. And then all the way through to 600 megahertz on receive only. So basically, if you're using it for amateur radio, you've got access to the 2 meter band, the 70 centimeter band and the 1.25 meter band. So we can class this as what we call a tri-band radio. Anyway, it also has VHF airband and the FM broadcast bands built in. Other notable features, as we said briefly, USB-C charging, a 2500 milliamp hour battery pack and GPS reception, and up to 10 watts power output with 3 selectable power levels, wireless frequency copying, and 640 memory channels with something called zones. So you can organise these things in a much more structured way, which we'll talk about shortly. So the radio has a rugged appearance and gives the impression of being pretty solid in the hand. And as I already mentioned, it looks similar to the classic UV-5R, but it's on a bit bigger scale. As you can see, it looks kind of chunky, doesn't it, when you sort of turn it around there. It's certainly a lot bigger radio than the original one, and that in part is due to the fact that it's got the 2500 milliamp hour battery pack on the rear of this radio too. So it's all well laid out. Nice clear keys, very easy to see in the dark as well. You've got a nice backlit keypad down here, which you won't be able to see in the studio lighting unless you turn the lights out or use it on an evening. But it does work pretty effectively. Just pop it down there a second. You'll also see it's got a rotary on-off volume control. So this one here is very similar to the Quansheng's and also some of the other Baofeng radios. So this knob seems to be getting into all these radios recently. This classic black and orange. As you can see there, the antenna's also got the black and orange stripe on it too. Now, I'm going to shock you all in a second because this radio doesn't actually have a flashlight. As you can see, there's like a moulding in the top of the radio there next to the volume control, and there's just like a cutout there, but there's no flashlight, so that's going to upset quite a lot of people, I can imagine. Not really, but the reason why this one doesn't have the flashlight in is because it's got the GPS functionality. So in the top of the radio up here, I believe, is where the GPS antenna lives, and that's the reason for it, because there's a GPS module installed in this radio. So that's going to be so that the radios can send positioning data to each other. So that might come as a shock to some people that there's no actual flashlight in the radio. But anyway, you can see that there's no rotary channel change or anything to step through the memories with. If you want to go through memories, what you need to do is just press these up and down arrow keys down here to cycle through everything. And it's the same for the menu. As you can see there, I've got some 2 meter band amateur radio frequencies programmed in. It's just a case of going through the menu using these up and down keys as well. So no big deal. But anyway, on the left hand side of the radio, we have the PTT. It's made of plastic, this one is. It's not rubber on this one. So it still has a positive feel. When you press it down, it does work well. It sort of clicks as you press the PTT. But you've also got 2 programmable keys here, one underneath the PTT and one at the top, which can be set in the CPS software to do various things, such as release to squelch for monitoring, etc., and all that kind of stuff, and start scanning, for example. That's another thing you can do with them. But overall, I do like the design of the radio, with it being so, chunky. It does look quite the part, really, and it does seem quite well built. On the right hand side, you've got the little flap which you can pull down to reveal the standard K-type jack, which is for programming. So if you're going to connect your CPS software and do some of that, you can use that jack there. Same as every other Baofeng usually, so standard stuff. So if you've already got a programming cable that you've used for a previous version, like a good sort of 75% of the Chinese radios use the same type of port anyway. So you've got that down there as well, which is quite nice. You can also plug in speaker microphones, etc. So all that kind of stuff too. On the rear of the radio, you've got a USB-C flap on here. If I just flip it open, if I can do. Nope. There you go. It's quite solid. There you go. USB-C charging built into the battery pack itself down there. So nice and easy. I quite like it because it's on the rear of the radio. So if you put the radio down on the desk, you can plug straight into that port, whereas some of them are on the base of the radio where you've got to leave it face down, but not the case on this Baofeng, which is really good. So that's it for connectivity, and as you can see, pretty much standard stuff there. Now, one thing that's interesting is you don't get a desktop charger in the box with these, just a USB-C lead to charge up the radio, but you can get a desktop charger for them because the battery pack's got the pins on it, and this is a 5RH charger, which is included with some other models. So if you happen to have one of these new generation radios, you can actually get this desktop charger. So in theory, there you go, look, we're in there. And there's the desktop charger, so it will work with the previous generation of Baofeng 5RH chargers and accessories, so that's worth remembering too. But for the majority of people, they're going to be quite happy just charging it from a phone charger or USB-C cable, so it shouldn't be an issue. But I just thought I'd point that one out because I just came across this upstairs in a box, and I thought I'll give it a try, and sure enough, it works fine with it. So that's the 5RH charger, which is included with some of the other models. Now, the belt clip on the back of the radio with these is pretty decent, to be honest with you, and I'm pleased to report this. A lot of these Chinese radios come with a really flimsy plastic belt clip, and whilst this one is made of plastic, it is attached to the battery pack directly with metal screws, which makes a great change anyway. And the other thing is, it is reinforced at the back of it then. If you can see from there, it's pretty difficult to get a picture of it there, but it's actually got metal reinforcements as well to strengthen it up. So what you've got is a pretty durable belt clip on this radio, which is better than the average, which I'm pleased to report is actually working fine when I've taken it out and about. So yeah, pretty decent, to be fair. So antenna wise, this radio comes equipped with a 7-inch rubber duck to cover VHF and UHF frequencies. Just one word of warning, it doesn't cover the 1.25 meter band, that's the 200 megahertz range, 220 to 260. You'll need to source your own antenna for that one. But the good news is that this antenna can be easily replaced. It's okay for what it is, it's nothing special, it's just a dual band stock antenna. But I do like the little bit of orange and black flash on there, it does make it look quite stylish. That apart though, just take this off and you'll see that it is a standard antenna port anyway. It's just SMA jack, and what you would need is an SMA female type antenna to pop into this. So you may already have a few of them kicking around like I do. I've got some of those high gain ones, you know, the military style tactical one, what some people call the tape measure antenna, and anything with a little bit more gain on it really. So something like that do nicely, but it's a stock antenna connector, so nothing different on that one anyway. So if you do need to replace it, it's easy enough to do anyway. Now let's take a closer look at some of the features that are available on this radio. One of the best things about it is the VFOs, and you've got two of them on here. Toggling the A/B button moves it from top to bottom VFO, and the best thing about it is you can have one set to memory and one set to free frequency entry mode, like the one down here, or you can have them both set to a frequency entry mode, or you can have them both set as memories. They do work independently of each other, and you don't need to have them both set to channel like you do on some radios. So you can define them. It's easy enough to switch between VFO and memory recall mode by just pressing this orange button here. As you can see, both the two top and bottom VFOs are now set to direct frequency entry. If we press that again, we can set that one just to memory. Press the A/B button, going down to the bottom VFO. We can then press this button here and we can have them both set as memory banks instead. So the choice is yours. It's quite flexible. Some of these low-cost radios I've used in the past only allowed you to switch between memory and VFO, and it changed both of them at the same time. I think the XH Data I looked at recently did something like that. But this one, totally independent. You can choose how you want to organize your two VFOs, which is really, really good. Now, this is another great trick that I discovered whilst I was playing with the radio. If you hold down the A/B button, at the moment we're in dual channel, dual watch mode. If we hold down this blue button here, we can change to what they call just single watch mode instead. So you'll notice that now there's a mute speaker icon appeared up in the top right hand corner there. That means that if any signal comes through on that top VFO, it's not going to switch between the bottom one that we're currently monitoring. So, you know, it can get a bit busy at times if you've got a lot of activity on the bands and you don't want the radio switching automatically between the top and bottom VFO. You can turn it off. So that's in what they call single watch mode now instead of dual watch mode. If we press this again, this is a really good one. Just hold down the A/B button again and you can go into just large screen mode. So that's just basically single channel mode or single VFO mode. And this is very good because if you put it into memory mode, you can now see the channel number and you can see the frequency that's stored in that memory as well. And underneath there you can see a signal meter and like the current squelch level actually on this one, and the zone. So it gives you like a larger display with more information on it, and that's quite good as well. And just holding down A/B again goes back around to dual watch mode. So as you can see there, it's really, really flexible. You can choose the display layout and how you want to do things, which I think is really cool. So that's a great feature in there. So let's take a look at the menus on this radio. Underneath the other keys we just talked about, there is a green and red key, and this gets you into the menu system. So if we click on the green one there, let's just bring it in a bit so you can see it a bit better on the camera. It's very different from some of the previous Baofengs and some of the other radios I've used. So you've basically got master menus and then you've got sub menus underneath them. So you've got something called zone up there. We've got scan, radio setting, program channel. Incidentally, you can program everything by hand on this radio, which is really good. Radio info, which gives you things like the firmware version and everything. And then Bluetooth, which we're not sure what it does because there's no mention of it in the book at all. And so far, we don't think the features have been implemented on this radio, but maybe that's coming in a future firmware update, or they're going to release some kind of app for programming. I don't know for sure. If anyone's got any ideas, drop them in the comments, but there's nothing in the book about it at all at the moment. GNSS, which is basically the GPS functionality, so that's the satellite function, which will retrieve positioning information. And then you've got NOAA weather, which obviously lets you access the weather band channels in the US and Canada, I believe. So yeah, so you basically got these top level menus and then you drill down into them. And the zone feature is really good, because I've always complained about Chinese radios having all these memories, but yet there's not been any sort of memory bank management in them. But with zones, you can literally define a bank of channels and put them in. And I think you're best doing this using the CPS software. I'm not even sure if you can do it all by hand. But what I discovered is that, you can create banks of channels. So in this case, if I go into zone now, I can literally just select a bank of channels that I'm interested in scanning or receiving, and I can just select one from here. So at the moment I'm on ham simplex, but I've defined some of the zones there. There's one for PMR 446, there's ham repeaters, which has got some of my local repeater frequencies stored in, ham simplex, which is obviously channels for the simplex two-way radio channels on 2 meters and 70 sems, and marine frequencies too. So I live by the coast, so I'm interested in monitoring shipping and things like that, so I've got a bank of those in there. And also I've just thrown GMRS in there for another range of frequencies to demonstrate how things work. And although we don't have the GMRS frequencies in the UK, it is quite routinely used by people using illegal radios that have been imported from the United States. So you do hear people on the GMRS frequencies in, hence why I've programmed it in here, because I just like to have a scan around and see what we can find. And you'll be surprised how many people are actually using those frequencies sometimes. So that's kind of interesting. So simple as doing that, all you have to do is, say if I want to go to PMR 446, just press the green button, select it, and then press red to come out of the menu. And as you can see there, PMR 446 channel 01, and the 16 PMR frequencies that are available, which technically you shouldn't use on these type of radios, but we're okay for listening and scanning around. And if I was to set off scanning now, which I can do by holding down this hash key down here in the corner, you'll see the green light starts flashing and it's scanning just that zone. So this is a really, really useful feature, and one that I've been calling for a long time. So basically, memory banks organised as zones, and it means you can group all your channels together and become a bit more organised, because it's okay having hundreds of memories, but if you have no management of them, it makes it really difficult to be of much use. So I've seen radios with 1,000 channels before. This one's got 640, because there's basically 10 zones you can define, and the maximum number of channels you can put in each zone is 64. So we've got 640 channels, which is enough for most people. And you'll be able to put all your local repeaters in and things like that as well, or like I've done, marine frequencies. The only downside is I found that due to the limitations of the CPS software, you can't put airband frequencies into the zones right now, which is a bit of a blow. If you are interested in scanning the whole entire range of frequencies you've got programmed in, you can change this. You can take it out of zone mode and make it scan all the memories. So that's another option that's in the menu as well. If we just go back into here, as you can see there's scan. You can set a frequency range, so it can act like a normal radio scanner. So you can define 2 frequency points. As you can see there, 136 to 174. And you can put an upper limit and a lower limit, and then you can go off scanning just like you would do with any other radio, which is kind of cool. Scan mode, usual things: carrier operated, time operated, and squelch operated, etc. You can scan for CTCSS codes and things like that if you're not sure what a radio is using, which is really good. And scan memory as well. If I just go back out to there, there's various options in there, you see. Encoder, decoder and all. So they're very flexible on the scanning options. Go back out to the other menu again. Radio settings, well, I'm not going to go through every single one of these because there's so many of them in the radio, like every other Chinese radio. All the usual things like Vox, power saving, squelch level, timeout timers, etc. and the famous Roger beep and the backlighting. So plenty of stuff in there. Programming a channel, you can do all that directly on the radio without using any CPS software, which is really good. You can type a name in. It's got a really good naming system. So for example, if I click in there, look, you can see there, it's really, really easy to enter into this. You can use the keypad below to enter text. And in the top corner, it shows Chinese symbols, but you can change it, I believe, by just pressing the hash symbol up there. It shows ABC. And then goes back through Chinese, then numeric mode as well. So it's very easy to type things in on the keypad. If you're as old as I am, you'll remember when mobile phones used to have a keypad like this, and you could tap out a text message on it. So it's a similar kind of entry system to that, I would say, really. So I'm not going to try and delete my PMR memories. There we go. So RX frequency, TX frequency, transmit power. You can change it between low, mid and high as well, which is really good. Bandwidth, wide and narrow, and obviously set your CT/CSS code and DCS if you're using a repeater. So yeah, signaling. There's all sorts, whether it's choosing to add it into the scan range or not, if you want to skip it or you want it to become part of your scanning. So many things you can actually do in there. Radio info, as I was saying, version numbers, and that's your firmware and everything. This one's on firmware 1094. My radio, and this is where you set your radio ID up, which we'll talk about when we get to the GPS section in a minute. Bluetooth is a bit of a curiosity at the moment. Don't really know what that one's doing in there. Hopefully it'll get used for something in the future. GNSS is GPS satellite positioning, and if you get a lock on the GPS, you need to turn it on in there, obviously, to enable the GPS. GPS info, my position, and as you can see, it's actually picked up my current position inside my studio. So that's kind of interesting, because it's brick built walls and everything, and it's managed to pick up a GPS lock inside here, which I'm quite surprised about, to be honest. It did take a while. I didn't think it was going to happen, but as you can see there, you can see my position, and you can see current speed, altitude. We're 104 meters above sea level here, and as you can see, number of satellites received, it's received 7 satellites, so it's actually picked up 7 inside the building, which is quite good, really. I've seen it pick up as many as 22, but it seems to be quite a sensitive GPS module that's inside these, which is really good. And obviously time and date when I'm filming this as well there. So that's kind of interesting. And we'll go through these other features in a minute, but so many things in the menu, time zone, etc. And NOAA weather, which we talked about already. So there you go, that's the basics of the UV-5RM Plus. So here's a quick demonstration of the GPS capabilities of the UV-5RM Plus, just in pretty dense forestry area. You can see there's a lot of trees around here, so the signal's not going to be the best for the GPS. So I'm just going to see if I can get a lock over here. So we'll just go down to the menu key. Let's go down to GNSS and see if we can get it into this one. GPS info, try again. GPS info, there you go. So you got your positioning information there, and yeah, let's have a look. My position, there you go, latitude, longitude, and there we go. That's the altitude at the moment in this place, and we're receiving a few satellites there, so not too bad really, all things considered. Obviously the more satellites you get, the more accurate the positioning is, but that's pretty sufficient really. So it's receiving pretty well considering where it is at the moment. So we'll try sending some positioning coordinates between the two radios in a few minutes when we get up to top of here. Okay, so we've got the two UV-5RM Plus GPS radios here to test out in the forest today. So just an outdoor test. You saw the one earlier on inside on my workbench, so we're just out in the open, up in the clear. So I'm going to do the same test again, basically, just to show how the system works. So obviously you got to make sure the radios are in GPS mode first, and each radio has a unique ID set. So this one on this side, as far as I know, is radio 1, and this is radio number 2. So we're going to engage GPS mode, make sure they're both on the same frequency, obviously, and we're just going to set that one up. So let's just check. So it'll say something like member 01 host up here, which we can see on the display there. So it says host, so that's radio ID 1, radio ID 2, there we go, that's host on this side. So all we have to do to send the coordinates from this radio to this one here is just press the PTT once. Now we're going to just step back a second and watch the other radio. Hopefully I don't knock it down when I do this. So if I just press the PTT, as you can see there, the other radio just received, and you can now see on the screen there member 01, and it sent the coordinates from the first radio, but this was 01 if you remember, and this is now showing the positioning information from radio 1. That's really good. So if we wanted to send it back, we can just simply go to host 02, which is this one here, host 2, and if we just press the PTT on this one on this side and keep an eye on the display on the other one, there you go. You can see there it's changed the positioning information again, and what you can see on the display now there is member 02's coordinates. So what we're going to do now is try and demonstrate the request position feature. So how this works is that both radios are set up to automatically respond to any requests received on the right radio ID. So in this case, the one on the right hand side is radio 1, and I'm going to pick up radio number 2. I'm going to try and attempt to request its position. So we're going to go to member 01 in the list, and as soon as we press the PTT on this radio, it should send a request for position, and the other radio should transmit back automatically. So let's focus on this one down here. So this is radio number 1. Watch the PTT light under the VFO MR button, and as I pressed my PTT on this radio, you should see the red light come on the other and send the coordinates back. So let's just try that. There you go, you see the red light come on, so that sent the data back. And if we now look at the screen, it now says member 01, and there you go, that's got the positioning data, the bearing and everything. And also, if I press confirm, let's go back to it on member 01, press confirm, we can see some more details. Look, distance 0.7 meters from the other radio, which is exactly right, I would say. So yeah, it's a pretty accurate system. Likewise, if I now, oops, didn't want to enter the other menu, let's go back on this one, put radio number 2 on there, and pick up this other radio here, radio number 1, and then go to number 2 in the members list. As you can see there, it's got no positioning data yet. So now I'm going to key up on this radio, request the position, and let's see if this other one transmits back. Try that one more time. There you go. So we've got a red light on that one, requested the position successfully, and now, as you can see on the display there, it's got the position of the radio. And if we press confirm and scroll down, 0.7 meters. So there you are, you can automatically request the position of any other radio that's set up receiving in GPS mode. So it's a pretty neat little system really with regards to doing this. So you can see the uses for it. The only downside is you can't talk on the radio at the same time as it's in this mode. You've got to leave them both locked into the GPS mode. And to exit that, all you do is just press the red key on each of the radios, and that brings them back into normal mode. But as you can see, it's a quite useful little feature. So I just thought I'd demonstrate it outside, but you can see, you know, you could be quite a long way from the other radio and still be able to get the positioning data as long as you're within radio range. Let's just try one more thing and just go back into GPS mode on this one. That's number 2, obviously. We'll just walk a bit further away from this one, just down this direction, leave the radio on the bench, and see how accurate the GPS is. So, just a little bit further away from it now, as you can see, just a bit further down from here. So I'm just going to go into here, press the button, request its coordinates, hopefully that transmitted back. There you go, 4.8 meters away from the other radio now, just for me walking down here, and you can see the distance and the bearing on the side of the screen there. So yeah, very good, all seems to work as it should do. So that's quite an interesting little feature built into these radios. Okay, it's about time for a power test. As you know, this radio claims up to 10 watts on some bands, and that means we've got low, mid and high power available. So we're going to start off on the 2 meter band, then work our way through to the 70 sems band, and finally look at the 1.25 meter band and see what power levels we're getting out of the radio. So to do this, we've got the Shawcom SW33 meter attached to the radio in a dummy load. So let's start. So you might be wondering why I've avoided talking about this green button down here. Well, the answer is because we've covered it in a few similar radio reviews recently, but it's basically a seek button that allows us to capture the frequency and tone code that a nearby radio is using. So think of it a bit like Unident's close call function. So when a radio transmits nearby, this will then display its frequency and decode its CTCSS or DCS tone, which can be really useful. If you've got a radio that's unknown to you, that hasn't been programmed by you, and it hasn't got a display on it, and you want to find out what frequency it's operating on, all you have to do is key up on that radio and it'll capture the RF and display the frequency, like a frequency counter would do. So let me demonstrate the function. It's really, really handy. This one's quite a good implementation on the Baofeng. So if I just press that button down there, it says seeking. You've got to set the band you want to seek for. In this case, it's looking at the 400 to 480 megahertz band, but you can go into the menu and you can change those settings. Now, 433-400 on this radio is set up on XX data. So what we're going to do is I'm going to key up on this radio and we're going to see if it can capture the RF from this one nearby. So I'm just going to take this out of the way. You don't have to be so close to it. If I just key down on this now, there you go. As if by magic, we've got 433-400 on there. Amazing. And it shows the CTCSS code of 71.9 on there as well. And as you can see, now it's captured that. It stays on the screen till you get rid of it or press exit. And you can hit save and save it into a memory. So immediately you can use the same frequency that the other radio is transmitting on. So I think that's a really good implementation. It works really well. So this is a brief overview of the UV-5RM Plus CPS software provided by Baofeng. As you can see, it looks a little bit different from some of the Chinese CPSs, and unfortunately you can't program this radio yet through Chirp. But the software isn't bad. I'm just going to quickly show you this reading from the radio. So down here, got a data cable connected up, and as you can see, the radio is sending the contents back up to the CPS now. Now it does take about a minute or so just to read everything. It's not too slow. It's pretty good, this. But if we just quickly have a look while that's loading up there, as you can see down the side, it's pretty logical the way it's laid out. It does look like a DMR code plug to me. It's very much, I think it's been adapted from a digital radio, this one, even though it's only analog, if that makes sense. We've got some really interesting stuff here down the side. And one of them is the memory channel configurations, which uses zones. And that is one of the most important things in the radio, I think. If we go to zone config, you can have up to 64 channels in each zone. And these are basically memory banks. So we can organize our channels like these ones I've got here. I've got PMR 446, repeaters, simplex, marine band, GMRS, and anything else that I've been tweaking with here as well. So just kind of interesting really that you can organize these, and it shows you how many channels you've actually got in use. So I've nearly maxed out the marine band ones there, but the rest of them have plenty of space left in them. It'll make more sense if I show you this. So if I go into, say, ham simplex channels, as you can see there, this is your 64 channels you've got available, and I've programmed these into here. So I've got a lot of the channelized operations for 2 meters in there. It's quite easy to do. Obviously you can't import them in from anything, which is a bit of a pain in the backside. You have to type everything in by hand inside here. There's no way to import anything, unlike in Chirp. But as you can see, you can set all the options, the bandwidth, the tone encoder and decoder, etc. And you can click through it. So it's not too bad to use anyway. It's just a bit of a shame you can't really import anything from this one. So it's a case of having to type everything in from scratch. I've got marine frequencies in there as well. As you can see, done the same thing again there, just gone all the way through. So yeah, pretty comprehensive stuff. Just before I go on to the VFO section, just something of note inside here. I've been trying to add airband frequencies, and this is the problem I've got here. If we type in an airband frequency, like this one here, it just jumps straight to the VHF range of 136 on FM. The CPS doesn't currently accept any AM airband frequencies. And that's a real blow, because I wanted to store an aircraft bank into here, into zone 6. And as you can see, every time I try and enter something in the AM airband range, it doesn't work. And I don't think it's a limitation of the radio, it's more down to the CPS. So I'm afraid they're going to have to update this CPS to enable that function. So at the moment, the only way to listen to airband is to type it in directly on the VFO. It won't store any airband frequencies in here. So that is a little bit of a blow right now. As you can see, if we go down to the VFO section, we can put AM airband frequencies in, and it's accepted them perfectly. So it's not the radio, I don't think. It's just down to the CPS right now, so that needs looking at. Apart from that, it's pretty comprehensive. You can set the timeout options and the scanning options, what you want it to do when it stops scanning, scan the frequency range or memories or zones only, and that's if you're searching out frequency. You can set an upper and lower limit inside there. DTMF tones, things like that, which you might use for accessing repeaters and business radio systems. But one thing I did want to go through very briefly is contacts. Now you can see here I've defined 3 different contacts with 3 names. Equally, they could have call signs in or anything. I've just put 3 example names up here. And this is imperative to get the GPS option working on the radio. You've got to at least have unique IDs for each radio in the group, or they won't transmit any positioning information. So in this case, this is radio number 1, which is me, and then my friend Steve, his is number 2, and I've got somebody else called Mike in there as well. So basically, you've got to have one of those in and set each radio with a unique ID, otherwise it will not transmit any positioning info. I've got to explore the APRS options on this radio. I've popped my call sign in there, and I need to have a look into that to see how this works, but that could be in a future video because I've not managed to get it to work just yet, so that's something else to look into. But regarding that, going back all the way up to settings, we should be able to see somewhere on here, I think it's more settings. Yeah, under this one, contact ID, this is the ID of your radio. As you can see, look, there's 1, 2 and 3. You can create up to 50 contacts, I think it is. So you can have up to 50 radios in the group sending positioning information. Each one's got to be unique. So this is radio 1, my other radio was number 2, etc, etc. Obviously make sure your GPS is enabled as well. And that's about it really. Other things of note, programmable side keys, you can do all that inside here. So as you can see, you know, it is very customizable, but at the same time it's a little bit lacking in some areas. But I think that will come in time, maybe if Baofeng update the CPS and make that a little bit better. But it's all pretty good. And I notice you can also add a boot picture as well. So I think it takes BMPs, so you can customize the bootloader screen. So when the radio turns on, you can have your own logo or name or something inside there as well, which is really cool. So they have thought of a lot of things inside this, but it does remind me of a DMR code plug. But very straightforward, writing data back to the radio, just hit your COM port, hit start, and away it goes. And that is it, writing back to the radio. So all being well, as you can see there on the screen down here, it's doing the same thing again. It's just showing the little icon of the computer on the screen. And that is about it. The only one thing I would wish for is, well, 2 things actually. One is chirp compatibility, and the second is the AM airband zone storage, which would be really good. But apart from that, yeah, all works pretty comprehensively. G0SGR, this is G7UFS calling on S8. Are you by the frequency, Steve?
Yep, G7UFS, G0SGR. Yeah, got you, Sam, go ahead.
G7UFS returning. Yeah, okay, Steve. Yeah, coming in nice and clear. I'm using this Baofeng UV-5RM Plus GPS radio. Bit of a title really, but it works really well. I've just got it plugged in up in the Radio Shack at the moment into the disc cone antenna. So we're on high power. No, we're on medium power. About 5 watts output, I think it is. And I'm using one of these TID radio speaker microphones with it, Steve. So just wondered how it sounds to you. Back to you.
Yeah, G0SGR returning. Yeah, spot on. Yeah, it sounds nice, crisp, clear. Nice tone to it. I don't know how far you're speaking away from it, but it sounds just right, to be honest with you. I won't be able to tell the difference, you know, whether it was on your 500 or what, Simon, go ahead.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it, really? Yeah, I'm about, speaking about half a foot away from the microphone as well, but I'm trying to film this at the same time, which is why I've put the speaker mic on. But it does seem to work pretty well with these radios. It's that TID radio speaker mic. I think we did a test with it quite some time ago last year, if you recall. You know, when I did that antenna test and I got a pack of accessories and it came with that. So I'm quite pleased with the speaker mic. It's quite loud on all these different radios. But yeah, the UV-5RM seems pretty good on its reception as well. You know, like I say, it's plugged into the disc cone antenna, and I've been having a scan around and I've been hearing all sorts of stuff like the aircraft and everything as well. So, I mean, you know the radio, you've got one of these that's very similar that we purchased last year. So you know the radio I'm using now, so you'll be aware of all its functions and features anyway, Steve. But yeah, to me, I quite like the audio from it. You know, it's good sort of transmit audio as well as the receive side. Go ahead.
Yeah, G0SGR returning. Yeah, it's spot on. Can't argue with it, Simon. It's good. Have you tried accessing the repeaters or anything like that with it, or you know, on your what power settings? Is it 3 power settings? Did you say, or are you on high power now? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm on medium power, Steve. They do up to 10 watts, these radios. I did my power test earlier on and I managed to get a maximum of about 9 watts out of it. And that was up on 70 sems. Yeah, they do work quite well. I don't really run it any higher than medium power, but I don't really see there's much point really on a handheld. I mean, obviously, if you need the extra power just to get out a little bit further, it won't make as much difference as you think, though, going up to high power, I wouldn't have thought. But no, it certainly works well. Yeah, I've tried it on repeater as well. Seems okay. Tried it with GB3NY and also HS, and it's been able to access those no bother at all. So, yeah, it's amazing what you can do on 5 watts, Steve, from G7 UFS.
Yep, G0SGR. We'll just knock it down onto low power. Because, I mean, you're right across the scale to me at the minute. So, if you just want to knock it down and see if it makes any difference in the audio quality or anything, Sam, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, Steve, I'll knock it down to low power if you just give me a second, because I think low power, I measured it around 2 watts. So, yeah, we'll see what it does. So, stand by. Right, G0SGR, G7 UFS, that's just on 2 watts or just underneath 2 watts there, Steve. Back to you.
Yeah, G0SGR, yeah. No difference whatsoever, to be honest. Still right across. Audio's the same loudness and tone and everything, so there's no noise with you, anything. It's exactly the same, go ahead.
So that's it, the Baofeng UV-5RM Plus. A great radio for the money at around the $40 price point. I think this is going to be a winner, and I think Baofeng are going to sell a lot of these transceivers. And the reason why is simply because they are feature packed and they are pretty easy to use too. I do like the zoning capability, which is excellent. As I've been saying for a long time, many of these Chinese radios have a lot of memories and no way to organise them, but at least with this model you can organise them into some kind of logical banks and everything, and I think that's what separates these from some of the other radios that are on the market at the moment. So it's a very good plus point, that is. So I'd hope that a lot of the other manufacturers will start to introduce this kind of level of sophistication into their low-cost radios as well. The GPS is really useful too for certain activities such as sport or outdoors, hiking and that kind of thing. I can see that being very useful to some people too. Regarding audio quality, I've been told that these radios sound absolutely brilliant on the air. Nobody said a bad word about them. Everyone said they're crystal clear both on the transmit, and I've heard the speaker on the receive, and I'm quite happy with how it sounds too, so that's a good plus point. The only negative I've got to say about the radios is the fact that the airband frequencies cannot be stored inside zones at the moment. I think it's a restriction on the CPS software rather than the actual radios themselves, hopefully. So maybe in a future software update, Baofeng can address that with their CPS, and it would be really nice if we could get these radios working in chirp as well. So maybe that'll happen in the near future, I don't know. Maybe as the radios get more popular, somebody will write a driver or Baofeng will be working with chirp to get this onto the list of radios there. That'd be really, really good, because it takes so much time out of radio programming. Having to key frequencies back in using custom CPS each time is a bit of a pain in the backside, as they say. But we can hope that this comes in the future, and hopefully not too far away too. Anyway, I'd just like to say thank you to baofengradio.com for supplying these test units that I've got here on the desk today. Really appreciate the support of the channel, guys. Without them, I couldn't have done the GPS testing because I needed 2 identical units. So, as always, I'll leave some links in the description if you're interested in purchasing your own radio. And of course, if you've enjoyed the review and you found it helpful, please leave a like for the channel and consider subscribing. And I will catch you in the next video, and hopefully we've got some more radio gear to review very shortly. So cheers for now, 7 freeze, catch you in the next one, bye for now.